Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church in Columbia, South Carolina, where we're part of the ELCA. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. I was reading a book the other day about how we interpret Scripture, and the author really started with a pretty helpful way to think about the Bible. The Bible isn't so much a book, he suggested, as it is a library. It's a collection of works of different kinds, some law, some poetry, some prophecy, and more. Each of these different types works to reveal a facet of God in unique ways. Well, somehow that got me to thinking about how there are some parts of the Bible that we really don't turn to or read very often. 5 books in particular that we seldom use on Sunday mornings or look at any other time, which makes me wonder, why are these books in the Bible? What do they have to say that is important? So I invite you along this week as we look at some of the hidden treasures of the Bible and consider why these books matter. We will start this week with the tiny book of Lamentations. Frankly, you might not ever have realized that there was a book in the Bible called Lamentations, and it is indeed exactly what the title suggests. It is a book of laments. So what is a book of Lamentations doing in the Bible? Well, we need to consider what the laments are about. And it starts way back with Abraham. You see, God promised Abraham that he would be the progenitor of a great nation, in spite of the fact that he was already old and had no children. Still, Abraham believed God, and the promise came true. The thing was, that wasn't God's only promise. God also promised Abraham a place for that nation to live, a land to call their own. This land became known appropriately as the Promised Land, the land that God had promised to them. Then they became slaves in Egypt, and while they grew as a people, they had no land. But the dream lived on in their hearts. God led them out through Moses, and finally they came to that promised land. Even once it was theirs, they held on to the promise. This was their homeland, promised to them by God. They saw it as an ongoing reality. However, the more entitled they felt, the farther from God they drifted, until finally God needed to take that land away from them. So Babylon came, and Babylon conquered Jerusalem and took the people out of the land into exile. The prophet Jeremiah warned them about their faithlessness and its consequences. And as Jerusalem was under siege, he knew what was going to happen. And even before it did, he began to lament the loss of Jerusalem, and more importantly, the loss of the people's faith and the loss of the promise. Those laments make up the book of Lamentations. We know what it's like to grieve. Whether it's the loss of a loved one or the loss of a hope deep in our hearts, we know what it is to grieve. And maybe that's the first gift from Lamentations. It preserves the raw honesty of suffering. Life is made up of great joy and also of deep sorrow. And the book of Lamentations teaches us that faith allows room for that. Faith allows room for both. Faith allows room for lament. We can feel deep sorrow and pain and still remain faithful. There are a few verses in Lamentations 3 that move through both grief and faith. The thought of my affliction and my homelessness is wormwood and gall. My soul continually thinks of it. and is bowed down within me. But this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore, I will hope in him. There are several important things that arise from verses like these. We see that God's justice and compassion meet in sorrow. We learn how to grieve faithfully. Hope arises out of pain. And even in the midst of despair, we are anchored in God's unchanging mercy. God is big enough to take our fear, our hurt, and our anger. We can bring our full grief and questions to God without fear of rejection. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases, even in the midst of suffering. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases, even in the midst of suffering. Lamentations teaches us that not only can we turn to God in our despair in times of trouble, but God is present with us in the midst of them. We can express our sorrow and our grief in honesty with God and find ourselves embraced in God's warm arms of love. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. Great is God's faithfulness, no matter what. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.